thinking about all the things that we've been through in COVID, a couple of things that there were fits and stops in terms of what we saw from the linear networks in terms of their ratings. But then the thing that seems to have just accelerated and exploded, quite frankly, has been everything with streaming and the connected TV world. So you've recently purchased Tubi. So as you think about this up front and its importance as you're watching this complete acceleration, I believe the numbers last year going into COVID, they were seeing year-over-year increases of about 32%, and now we're seeing spikes of over 70% in terms of year-over-year growth for streaming. I mean, a great time for you all to get into that business and to have this as an asset in your portfolio. How are you thinking about utilizing it as we get into the negotiations for next year's or this year's upfront?
Yeah, we're really excited about Tubi. I mean, the timing of the purchase couldn't have been any better. To your point, when we were in negotiations, there was no thought of COVID. So we were investing in a platform that we believed in. They're a great tech stack, their content, they had a plan. They're not competing on the originals like, against a Netflix or an Amazon. They had carved out a great, avenue in that whole streaming competitive set. We loved their attitude. We loved the business, and it fit perfectly with Fox's assets. Tubi delivers a younger, more diverse, cord cutter, cord never audience that we just don't reach on broadcast. So not cannibalistic at all. And it just extends our reach to that. I mean, better than anybody, that's the audience the advertisers covet the most. And then you look at the experience, right? It's on demand, it's all premium content, data driven, ad serving, all of the attributes of digital with all of the scale and safety and of premium content that you see on broadcast. So it's really an exciting time, but you're right, there's a lot of competition out there. We plan on bringing it to market with our assets because I think it does expand our reach, especially in the traditional space. It's interesting because I think those platforms would have grown anyway. We've all gotten so used to the Netflix and Amazon experience of on demand. I don't know or streaming or binging or all the other things you can do. So I think it was coming anyway. And then obviously the stay at home where we had a lot more time to experience and experiment with these platforms. I think the audience has really embraced them because they're great experiences for the viewer, right? Lighter TV loads for your advertisers, right? So you can break through more innovative around ad content and pod innovation. So I think there's so much room for experimentation there. So we're really excited, and we put Masked Singer up in the fall. We put Masked Singer up in a couple of weeks ago. It was their #1 show, I think, in May. So again, there's things that Fox can do to enhance Tubi, but not turn it into Fox. And I think that's the plan, to do what Tubi does best, but just to enhance. And they were at an inflection point where they had gotten big enough, but they needed to be, get in front of you and your clients and, to get attention. And I think Fox can give them that. Fox can give them the marketing support that they need. So again, the timing couldn't have been better. And funny, it was not planned, again, all the circumstances led to make it an even smarter decision, but the conversations were in the works well before.
Well, listen, rather be,
exactly.
Time at the right place and be really super smart and get it wrong.
Exactly.
That's great. But when I think about that, as you were saying all of that, the thing that I keep thinking about from an entertainment perspective and even a sports perspective, quite frankly, is that these streaming services with the reduced ad load and these different types of ad formats that you can play into, how are creators and when Charlie's thinking about this and the team back at Fox, is it going to be easier to lure to getting better talent and better, behind the camera, in front of the camera, to go to Tubi because they know that the ad experience is going to be a lot better? I feel like the genie's out of the bottle, and I can't imagine post-COVID, when things go back to somewhat sense of normality, that people are going to want to go back to watching these, long ad loads from a linear perspective, right? Unless you're in a sports or a live environment that seems to be more additive and less pulling the show apart. Yeah.
Again, I think, and it's funny how you attune yourself when you're in that environment. The ads seem a little jarring, but when you're in sports and news, to your point, you don't notice them. They fit in with the content. They're all very relevant, and they all feel like they belong there. Plus, you probably need a break during all those, moments, exciting moments that the commercials actually give you a moment to pause. So I agree with you. I think that the intent is to always keep those at a different viewing level experience. And yes, I think you see what the talent that Netflix attracts and Amazon attracts. How could you not take advantage of that environment? But I also think the storytelling is different in the sequence, right? Because the assumption is people are streaming and binging, not necessarily watching one episode at a time. So the creative freedom you get to tell stories differently, I think all add to that. I think that OTT or AVOD is a great sort of middle balance between that completely subscription, which, you know, it's getting expensive, and are people starting to get subscription fatigue, right? And will lean more into AVOD than SVOD and maybe only pick one or two services because they can't afford 5 or 6. So I think AVOD gives, you know, it's a kind of a balance between great content on demand with a lot of opportunity, to your point, to innovate and attract talent to produce different type series, but still have an ad experience that makes it affordable for you to get this content for free.
I would agree, especially in the times we're in right now. You know, clearly we're in a recession, and knowing that, I think that some people just, you're not going to be able to afford all this. I mean, I know when I look at our bills, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm paying for all these services, plus cable, plus whatever else. You know, of course, being in the business, you want to test out everything.
Right. But I'm curious, like how, you know, I know there's, I know clients are, you know, I think last year there was a little testing of the waters. I think this year, to your point, they're reacting to this explosive growth. They've experienced the platforms themselves, so they're more comfortable. Like, how are you guys seeing it in your planning window? Is it a TV replacement? Is it digital replacement? Is it a combination?
We're fairly screen agnostic in terms of how we look at it. I think everything starts with the content, and it is truly following that consumer journey of how they're catching up with their favorite content and making sure that we're attaching ourselves to those audiences. So I'm less concerned about whether or not it's a 6-minute video or a 60-minute show. It's truly about finding that content that is right for our marketers who are trying to get people to buy more of their products. So from that perspective, we are heavily, we have a very strong point of view of moving a substantial amount into the connected TV space, into the OTT streaming, specifically as we think about like this moment in COVID right now, where we've seen sort of a reprieve in terms of the historical declines that entertainment on linear has seen. We're now starting to see that ramp up again. So I do think it's really imperative for us to make sure that we're moving to where the consumer is and getting in front of it. So to your point, yeah, we made some, you know, some decent investments last year, but we've been very aggressive with our clients in terms of making a much more substantial move this year.
And where does that, is that like, again, where does that money shift from? Is it?
It's a little bit of both.
Declines? Is it, you know, digital and like in terms of getting better premium content? Like, how are you?
We are trying as much as we can to take the reins off of digital and linear video as it pertains to creating a holistic video marketplace. So that's why I'm sort of leaning into the 6 minutes versus the 60, because I truly believe that it has to be looked at holistically, because the consumer is not just watching it on one platform, you know, they're watching it on multiple platforms. And I think as we've all been shuttered in, we're watching how our families are consuming content, and it really does change substantially. I'm watching my kids, whether they're, you know, they're watching it on their phone 1 minute, they're watching it on their laptop the next, and they're watching it on a 65-inch screen, and they're using different, you know, ways to get into that content. So I do think that we have to stop talking about day parts and stop talking about linear versus digital. We really need to talk about premium content. And even though I will tell you, there's still planning that's being done, as you well know, from sitting on both sides of the table, that are still planning in day parts. We are so desperately trying to tell our clients, stop. The faster we can start moving to audiences, I think the less we'll have this conversation about day parts and my digital video bucket versus my linear video bucket.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I guess that's the challenge that you deal with, right? Yeah. It's still, there's so much tradition in how things are planned, yet the consumer or the viewer doesn't have a clue the difference between prime and day. There's, you know, and again, if you do go to audience where you're looking for that auto intender or whatever you're looking for, it doesn't matter what time of the day or where they are, right? As long as you're watched, they're, you know, engaged in that content.
Yeah, we're really hyper-focused, and that's why we're really pushing our clients to stop testing as it pertains to audiences and really make that move this year to audiences. Because the faster they do that, then they're going to realize, and we'll be able to give them and guide them better in terms of what's more effective in their media mix, and how do we do that in, you know, in market, in actual during a campaign. We're really working on doing that right now. So I'm hoping that this next go will be that sort of Band-Aid on top of, you know, the demographics that we've been living with for so many years, and now moving to a more audience-based world.
So as a seller, how do you help me get there? Do you want me, like, is OpenAP the platform that allows you to expand that, or do you have your own in-house solution and it doesn't matter and we have to have our own in-house solution? Like, how do because again, you've been on both sides too. So it's interesting that you and I are having this conversation.
Correct. Considering I worked for you at one point in my career.
Yes, you did. That's right.
Yeah. So, the way I'm looking at it, it's interesting. When I took this job 4 years ago, there were 3 sort of walled gardens. And now, quite frankly, all the media companies have created their own walled gardens on top of it. So now I've got, 7, if you will. So, and quite frankly, every holding company, as we do, we have Omni, which is our proprietary platform for planning and buying that helps us look at things holistically across the ecosystem. We're working with OpenAP. I think David Levy and that team have done a really good job of sort of, bolstering that up. So I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think there's a lot of learning to do. So look, we're going to continue to do it on our side. I think some of the things that we've talked about is that what I think linear TV does really well is like a big blunt instrument that just gets mass reach really quickly for a marketer. And we need to use it for that, but we keep asking to go against demographics. If the average age of most of the linear networks is 50 to 60, you're a little bit younger than some of your competitors, but the average age is over 60 years old for the majority of it. And we're asking to deliver on 18 to 49, and then we scream about frequency. So we need to use it, I think, more for what it does really well, which is this big, large, blunt instrument that gets mass reach, and buy it on a different target, and then really layer in the audience to start seeing, again, because our marketers don't care if someone's 60 or if they're, 25, if they're in their subsets of be potentially buying their product, right? And that's what we need to start looking at as an industry.
Yeah. I mean, you and I had a conversation one night about, we do really need to put our sort of swords down and come together as an industry to really move this forward. What do you think we've made any progress in the year, or are we still kind of where we were?
I think that since this is a buyer's market, unfortunately due to COVID, nobody wanted these type of circumstances.
That is what it is, yeah.
Buyer's market, but it is what it is, right? And here we are. So we've specifically been putting guidelines together in terms of what we're going to ask from all of you so that we can look at this cohesively and across the full spectrum of all the media companies. I do think that it's incumbent on us in this marketplace to force everyone to come together. And my hope is that we will. I don't think what we're asking for is out of control or anything that you can't do right now. I think it's been that you haven't had to in the past. Right. And quite frankly, because you've all spent so much money creating your own proprietary tools, as we have, that nobody wants to share that. But I think we're at that inflection point that we need to really get going and make the move as an industry so that we're doing the right thing for the marketer. It's their money after all. That's why we're all here. So we just have to continue to do the right thing.
Yeah, it seems like we all have a single goal, and that's to bring the economy back and bring these marketers back and get us all back to health. And then we're going to have to do that as partners. We can't do that as,
no one can do it alone. So right? Just can't do it alone. So right, exactly. I totally agree. And that's our goal.
Okay, that's great.